Okay, we're back here with Jesse Hendrix, and that's the camera, and some artifacts that he brought back from Europe during World War II. And I'm going to have him talk about each one of these a little bit. First of all, I want him to talk about that camera there. And if you will, Jesse, if you'll just go ahead, we'll turn it over to you.
This is a 620, 120 camera here that I got in Germany there during the times that we would liberate the towns and going in and searching the town for weapons and various different things. And I was fortunate enough to
Okay, we're right here getting ready to look at and let Jesse Hendrix talk about some of the artifacts that he brought back from World War II during his time that he was in the battles there around Vichy and across southern Germany with our father Ralph Smith. So Jesse, go ahead, if you will, tell us about that good looking camera you got there.
This is a 120 Kodak camera there that I come by in one of the towns that we were liberated and going through and searching the houses for weapons and various things that the people shouldn't have. And some reason or the other, this camera I was fortunate enough to come by. And this camera, I made pictures after the war of all my buddies, comrades, and any way the camera was pointed, there's always a picture being made. So today I have many, many pictures that was made in Germany that we're all very, very proud of. This is just one of the items. These are just decorations. These were of German soldier decorations here, off of hats and arm, things of this type, shoulder pads. Now, I have a weapon here that I took from a police station of one of the small towns that we liberated. And this rifle, this pistol is a very, very heavy pistol. But what struck my attention on it was antique-ish. This is an antique gun. It was antique hanging in the police station, and today it's much, much older, so it's very valuable antique. And this is what we call a 44. It's an automatic pistol. Here I have a pistol, a little magazine fed pistol here, and this I took off of a German soldier officer that I guess he was very proud of his little gun because he had it strapped on him pretty good there. I was able to relieve him of it. Very proud of that. Incidentally, this gun here, this pistol, is one of my very, very favorite, and this is what got me started taking with antiques, that I am a great antique lover, and this gun happened to bring that on. This is the holster here of the German officer, and they had a name printed in it, which my eyesight will not permit me.
I seen that a minute ago.
To read that.
And it's something like lag, and it has a number 8446 or something. And what do you think that is? That the name of the
that could
officer?
be the name of the man, the officer that I took it from. I don't know about that, but I always figured that was his name in there,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm very proud of the name that's in there because it gives me all ideas that it was his.
And that thing fits
It
perfect.
fits very good in there.
Is that a 32?
That's a little 32 automatic pistol. Now, this making my antique collection here, getting me started at it, and of all things, was this gun here, which is a 16 gauge double barrel gun. Here, it's good for hunting various different things with. But the old rabbit ears on it was the antiquish part of it. Helped put two shells in it, and the way the safety is, it's foolproof even for kids there. And the antique to this is what made me want the gun to bring home with me to be a part of my collections of antiques. And I'm very, very proud of that little 16 gauge gun. That's pretty well all of those things. Now we had something a little while ago that had a little picture frame there that had the 100 infantry
Yeah,
emblem on it.
it's on the coffee table. Now tell us where that came from too.
All right, now this been sometime after the war, where it was a month, 6 weeks of what, I don't recall that at all.
It was certainly while y'all were occupational force, right?
We were in the occupational force. Now, the German man that made these little things like this and sold it to me for just a few marks as your monetary name. And this was the 100th Infantry Division now, emblem here, which I was very proud of. Now, this is the 3rd Infantry Division emblem here, which the man coinciding with me on it made this for me and put both emblems on this picture frame. Now this frame has a little slot in here. We can slide a piece of glass in there as large as you want it, and put a picture in there of whatever. So I'm very, very proud of that because of the emblems on it and the name and there again, I can't pronounce the name of the little town where it was at. Can you see that?
Yeah, it's Hammelburg.
Hammelburg. So the towns like this, we were from one to another, so they didn't register on me. And one of the great mistakes I made in my tour of duty there, wartime and after the war, is that I didn't have a daily diary to make notes on, and I should have had. But that's hindsight 20/20 vision.
Okay.
That pretty well concludes what I brought back.
That sure is a great collection. Yeah.
Jesse, that camera is invaluable. What you were actually able to do when you got your hands on a camera to preserve memories that would have been pretty much lost with your generation, but you were able to give copies to your comrades, I understand, because my dad came back with pictures, and now we found out that those pictures came from that camera.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. We made many, many rolls of film with that camera there, and pictures. It's worth a fortune to us because it brings back a lot of memories that we will not be able to share with anyone without a picture there.
They're priceless, and we would not have had them if you hadn't come upon the camera. And we'd seen those pictures for years in our family, but we had no idea. I guess we thought that the Army had probably had their own photographer that did some of that at the end of the war and then gave everybody one. But what a pleasure to me to meet the guy who actually had the camera that made this possible. It's just, it's amazing that we were able to connect up with you.
Well, there's many, many items that we have that we have shared over the number of years with friends and relatives and so forth. And we would not have had if we had not had the camera.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing that with us, Jesse. Okay, we're back here with Jesse Hendrix and his wife, Betty, and we just can pick up somewhere wherever we left off or wherever we want to start.
Well, I got one of the places where I was talking maybe of the guard duty that Ralph and I pulled together one night of the big building. And some reason after that period of time there, we got kind of separated. I never remember him going on a tank ride with me that we took shortly out of Stuttgart. And I don't know, I didn't see Ralph anywhere along the way on the tanks. He was not on my tank. We joined up with the Patton mechanized cavalry, and we rode the tanks there, and he'd run out of foot soldiers, and we had to fill the bill for him. These tanks, the Germans were retreating so fast until we couldn't keep up with them other than riding tanks, and Patton sure wanted to keep up with them. And each time we'd get close to a town or something, if we run into snipers, the foot soldiers was one that was always took the blunt end there and took care of the snipers or what little ground battles that we had. And then we'd get back on the tanks and go again. And it was repeated for hours on hours after that. And somewhere along the way, if we, like the city limits of Frankfurt, shortly after we come to the edge of the Autobahn. The Autobahn was a big super highway Hitler had built from Frankfurt to Berlin. And this was my first time of ever seeing a highway of any dream of thinking of a highway of this type. Never saw one like it. This highway was had 3 to 4 lanes on each side of the road. Through the middle was real wide. You could say as much as 100 feet or so on it, maybe less or more. And they had service stations in the center of the road. When you got on the Autobahn in Frankfurt going to Berlin, you would not have to get off of that superhighway at any point in time without it was at a point where you wanted to get off and go in another direction. Those times was few and far between because the purpose of this road was a thoroughfare road from Frankfurt to Berlin. So they had the service stations in the center of there. They had something as we call them today, 7-Elevens. Had the little market where you could get snacks to eat and all. We rode that superhighway for a short distance from Frankfurt, and we come upon a sight to see was a surrendered German army. And this was just thousands of German soldiers coming up onto the Autobahn and traveling in the center of the road with their hands over their head. And think of this many people surrendering at one time, and this was a whole entire army, officers leading the way in the surrender. We did not know where they come from. They were coming from the direction in which we were going to. And after they come on by, part of them, and we got off of the Audubon there and turned back to our right to miss all the action here. And that was the biggest surrender that I saw, or all the other soldiers with me saw in Germany. Traveled the Audubon, edge of the Audubon for a distance there, and we come to a town there, and I don't recall the town, but it was the concentration camp. That was what was it? Buchenwald. And now this camp was a slave labor camp, and it consists mostly of Jews and Polacks.
That was a prisoner of war camp.
And this was a prisoner of war camp, and they used it slave labor, and then when they got every ounce out of the body, then they put them in there, and they whether they died or they finished knocking the people off, and they buried them out in a field of dug trenches, just body on top of bodies, until they run out of ground space, and then they built big incinerators where they burn them up. And that was a very, very ugly sight to see all this odors and all. And boxcars was full of this type of thing, and these were mostly Jewish people, and they were stacked up around the buildings there at the incinerators like cordwood. We missed all of that as we come up on this place. We went around it and went to the back on our tank. And there we tore the fence down and went into the camp. Other soldiers had come in from the front, and they were the ones that took care of the front entrance of it, which I was, after it all said and done, I was very proud of it, because we made our circle in there and stayed just for, we might have been there an hour total, not much more or less on it. And when we left there then, we still traveled in the same direction as the Audubon, but we were deeper down from the Audubon then into rural territories. But then the town that this was the closest to, I understand it, that Patton, Eisenhower, and some of the other big generals inspected the camp, and in turn Patton went to the town, the closest to it there, and contacted the mayor when he got there, and got him out and told him and gave him direct orders that he wanted he and his wife and all his town people at that camp the next morning by 8 o'clock. He wanted them all to eyewitness what was right next door neighbor to them. And these people did. They marched. Left the little town marching and got to the camp up there at 8 o'clock sharp. And Patton, Eisenhower, and some of the other dignitaries were there to personally show these people what they had done right neighborly to them, and demanded these people to help clean up the mess. And these people had to help unload the trains, take what was on the ground and all, and properly take care of the bodies. And I understand shortly after that, the mayor and his wife killed themselves. But that was one of the worst, sickening ordeals that, if you don't think that will get you adrenaline real high enough to want to wipe out the whole country of Germany. But from there, it was just little towns then after towns, because we moved very rapidly after that. The Germans were surrendered very fastly, and the only ones that wasn't surrendered was right in Berlin. Those Germans in Berlin they could not surrender because Hitler himself would not permit it. But so many of them wanted to surrender to the United States and also to England, the troops there, to the English troops, because that way they could have better treatment after the war was over, and they knew that it was just a day or two that it was going to be completely over. But there was not too many of the troops was that fortunate to be able to surrender to the United States and to England. But we made a big circle around, and I don't know now, Czechoslovakia, we come to the border of Czechoslovakia, and at that point, I do not remember at all of where we did or not enter into Czechoslovakia. If we did, it wasn't very much, because in and out. And then I started to working at that point now, and I have vague remembrance how I got back to a little town, Schorndorf, which was close to Stuttgart, Germany. And I got there just a day or two before the surrender of the war. And there again, I tagged up with my good friend, Ralph Smith. And we set out onto the apple tree on May 8th. And our officer, or captain of the company, took and told us that the war was over and the surrender, and they had signed a peace treaty, the unconditional surrender, and that we were still had to carry our guns any and everywhere we went, and always stayed on alert for Germans, but that we were going to have to take and start searching for weapons and any other destructive materials in the towns nearby, and that was our next orders. So after searching all the towns in our area there, and Smitty and I stayed together pretty much so then, as side by side in searching of towns and farmlands and all that. And we got back, and the war being over, then we had to start pulling guard duties like ammunition dumps and various things that might be anywhere. But right when Ralph and I come up, I don't know which one left first. Now, I don't know where Ralph left the 100th Infantry, because he was, people were coming home, and they were coming home then on point system, and he was very high in points because he'd been in service. He was a great length of time more than me, and his points was much higher than mine. He'd been overseas longer than I had, and that gave him more points. So whether or not that I left the 100th Infantry and went to the 3rd Infantry Division before Smitty, or Smitty left the 100 before, I don't know how this all come about. Don't remember, but all I remember was us saying farewell to each other. And then winding up with the 3rd Infantry. Now there I stayed, I guess must have been somewhere 3 months, maybe 4 months. That was near, Nuremberg. We had a prison camp there, and that's where
That was where the trials were.
that's where we had so many of the high Nazi criminals there waiting for trial. Now, they were in there. And in this prison there, we guarded it. And this was the 3rd Infantry now. We guarded the exterior of the fenced-in prison. Now, we very, very seldom saw any prisoners in the fenced-in yard, which was for, I guess, exercising or whatever. They were inside the building, which was prison, and they were confined to the point to where they could not get to anything to commit suicide or whatever. And the trials there lasted even on many, many days after I'd left to come home from there myself. But while I was there waiting for my point system to get where I could come home in the number system, the opportunity to come up for the first soldiers to be able to go into Denmark on leave. And I did not want to go to Denmark. I did not want to go anywhere. All I wanted to do was to come to the good old USA. And I was afraid if I left there and be gone for a week's time, my orders might come through for me to come home. But even my commanding officer there assured me that my orders would not come through that quick. Well, I didn't want to, because monetary reasons, we had money books there that you had so much money that you could bring it back home with you, and mine was full, and I wouldn't get any more money, and I didn't want to come home without the monies that I had. So a little Mexican boy assured me if I would stake him in a poker game, he would see to it that I went to Denmark. Money wasn't any problem. And I staked him $25 in a poker game, and I wound up going to Denmark. That little Mexican won money. I mean, and he won it hard, honestly, in poker. There was no shady deal on it. But I went to Denmark and toured the country there. I was fortunate enough to go into the King's Palace there and went through it and shook hands with the King there. Incidentally, when you went into that King Palace, you pulled your shoes off at the door. This is something, you know. You hadn't been asked in Europe to pull your shoes off somewhere. But we did. We pulled our shoes off kindly and put on little slip-ons, and that's where we went through the King's Palace and met him. We did not meet the Queen now, but we met him, shook hands with him and all. So I broke this when Betty got me to talking about my stay in Europe and all, the war. I told her about this, and when we started looking for some of the records that might be of World War II, we run up on this Denmark and the book on it in the library. And one of the first things we done is we flipped through it. There was the King's picture on a horse. And this was a just very fortunate. It looked like everything went just clockwork to me and Betty there, and me trying to tell her this and that. And then this was me, and I immediately recognized that I was fortunate enough to shake hands with. And when this picture was made out from the palace there, Louise, on a horse riding around in all the people that was gathered around him and all. Wow. But when I toured the rest of Denmark and come back to Germany, come through, I went and come through Kassel, Germany, and through to Bremen, Germany, and that's where I had to take and use ferries then to get into Denmark and various places of Denmark. And but anyway, when I got back to my stay in Germany, my orders had come through for me to come home. And I got there at nighttime, what hour late. The next morning, good, daylight almost, they had my bags ready to put on the truck and hit me towards La Havre, France, to catch up with my group. And when I got to La Havre, France, they had the boat strike in New York, in the harbor. There was a harbor strike. There was no boats coming in, no boats leaving. And
Right?
Can't remember. Go ahead.
that when I got back to my staying place and my orders had come through to come home, everybody was really good. They had my baggage ready to load, my papers in order, and they put me on a train and headed me towards Havre, France. When I got to Le Havre, France, the boat harbor in New York, Camp Shanks, that boat harbor was closed, striked. And we stayed there in Le Havre, France at Camp, it was either Camp Campbell or Camp Lucky Strike. We stayed there for, must have been 4 or 5 days before the boat strike was settled. And the Red Cross was there. I don't think I've ever eaten as many donuts and drank black coffee in my life as I did there. And I was already, Red Cross was always places with their donuts and coffee. But there, because of grocers available to you, donuts taste pretty good. But when the strike being over with, they started loading us within, I'd say within 48 hours. We were on the boat pulling out of Le Havre, France. Now I was on the Liberty ship, and that Liberty ship which was like the one I went over, but it was a bigger one. But that thing made it to New York as fast as it could, I'm sure. But the waters was up and down, that boat was. And I never heard the song so many times as "Gonna Take a Sentimental Journey to the Good Old USA." And that was the sweetest music I think I'd ever had in my eardrums, was that "Gonna Take That Sentimental Journey."
I bet it was.
And so when we got to New York, we was greeted with a big ship come out. Now this was a big tugboat, I guess, all decorated up, and it had a big band on it, and I had all these people on there, big signs as welcome and all that. And I thought it was mighty nice to have that kind of a treatment coming in. And when we unloaded from that boat and went to Camp Shanks, which was the camp we was processed in, and went to the harbor to leave from. And we were treated like kings. You never saw as many grocers. They was working around the clock in the kitchen all the time. Steaks, so big you'd fill up a big platter. Everybody was served a big steak if that was what they wanted. And you'd eat steak just as long as you wanted. And stayed open 24 hours any time while we were there and being processed to ship out to be discharged. You had grocers of any type at any time. But I never went anywhere from camp to camp. We have papers processed as fast as they did there to get us out of Camp Shanks, headed for Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And boy, that was the sweetest train ride I've ever been on in my life. Camp Shanks, all the way to North Carolina, man, I tell you. Them old train tracks sound real good. And incidentally, going to Le Havre, France, that was a long ways to ride a train. That's the only train ride I really had there. Well, we rode a train a little bit when we went to Denmark. But then leaving Germany, from where I did, and hit the distance all the way back to Le Havre, France, and that train looked just like an old cattle cars. And they had seats on it, hardboard seats. And knowing that how they shipped a lot of the Polish and the Jewish people and other prisoners of war and slave laborers and all that in them old cattle cars like that. And those thoughts went through my mind many, many times. However, it was dressed up much, much neater than what they had. Oh, but that was it, and that thing rattled from one end to the other, and then the tracks like they were wore out. So that was a long, long train ride, and of course it would be that I was in a hurry to get home. But that's one time, and I was ready to put my feet on the good old U.S. soil.
I bet.
And that was pretty well the end of that thing. And that, when I come home, you had told me how your dad got there and it was so cold, and he parked a little ways from the house and walked the rest of the way. Well, we lived, my parents lived outside about 5 miles from downtown Carrollton. And when I got to Carrollton by bus, and I walked around the square a 3 times, just kind of seeing if there's anybody I could see or somebody come by that I would know or whatever. And I wound up having to get a taxi to take me home. And I thought, sure, I'll come back home. All this time gone, where I've been and everything. Nobody here to greet me to take me home. But anyway, I got home by taxi, and that everybody was thrilled to see me get home. And,
When was the last time that you saw Ralph while you were over there?
Well, he answered that.
the last time I saw Ralph was when it was either he was leaving the 100th Infantry Division because of his point system, or I was leaving the 100th Infantry to go over to the 3rd Infantry. Now, I finally left the 100th Infantry, whichever way it was. I went to the 3rd Infantry in the 100th. I understand to come back to the United States and disbanded the 100, and I think he come back to North Carolina, to Fort Bragg.
That's what I've read.
And at that point, the 82nd, they had a hard time ever getting the momentum of the 82nd back together, going again. But they took the 82nd, put it in the 100, took the 100 and made it a 100th Infantry Division. And that was the end of the 100th Infantry. Now, that's what I've heard many, many times. I don't know that to be 100% true, but that was the way it was. They didn't want the 82nd, and the 100, they were through with the 100 Infantry anyway, so they just automatically made it the 100th Airborne Division.
Well, now, you, I believe, gave Ralph a few songs or lyrics that some of his comrades had written. Can you tell us that story?
Well, now this boy, he gave me, it was, I don't know where it was, 2 dozen, 3 dozen, 4 dozen. He gave me a pretty good stack of songs that he had written. And he'd reached a point that he was not going to take it and pursue it anymore, but he was wanting to get back to the United States with them and maybe try to sell them. And whoever could buy all of them would take them and process them, and maybe they salvage 2 or 3 songs out of it or something. And I certainly didn't have any use for them, and I gave them to Smitty. Now, Smitty took some of them even then and looked them over and all, and he put them in his duffel bag, so there on, I don't know what he ever done with them. We brought them in where he ditched them. Why that?
Well, I have in one of my books, I showed your wife Betty yesterday, I have about 35 songs. Some of them are handwritten on V-mail paper. Some of them are just on plain notebook or typing paper. There's 1 or 2 that were tacked up that appeared to be commercial songs that were popular, that were released on the radio. And I don't know which was which, but you can pretty well tell most of the lyrics to those songs that were written in Europe were sort of like Dear John. They were always connecting to the time and that country versus this country. They're real interesting, and he didn't do anything with them, but he preserved them. And
Isn't that America that he done that? I mean,
Yeah. I can understand why he chose not to open them up, because of all the pain and memories of his experiences that y'all endured over there. So, but it's a treasure. I hope one day we can publish those again, and they'll be part of my books, and I'll certainly give y'all a copy of anything I got that you want.
Well, you said Dear John letters. I believe some of those soldiers got girlfriends over there after the war. They met German girls sometimes, and
Well, that happened too.
and that
See,
must have
now-
happened to.
You have to bring that up.
I'm gonna have to take, here, I'm gonna have to take quiet on the meeting girlfriend or whatever, 'cause
You're not gonna take
I
the
just
fifth
didn't
on that,
wanna.
are you?
Well,
Go
I-
ahead.
I
We
wanna-
had some,
No, I-
you know, there was a lot of pretty blonde-headed girls over there, I'll say that.
Black-headed too.
But you see, we weren't permitted to take and associate with them, Fraulines at all. That was off limits to us.
But did it keep
They
you from
told
it?
us not to fraternize, that was the first thing.
Was
they
it
told
okay
us.
for them to fraternize with you, though?
Well, they didn't say them not wanting candy bars either, but we always had plenty of candy for ourselves.
Yeah, you just go right ahead and
Well,
just tell the
Yeah,
story.
Well-
no, I'm not telling nothing. 'Cause
Well,
they're gonna show this to
Well-
somebody, well, they got cousins somewhere they're gonna go show this to. And I don't want wrong people seeing that, they're cousins now.
Well,
Well, there's a couple of stories relating that you wanted to know about the music connection there with the.
yeah, I was just
accordion.
wondering how my dad met Elfrida, because, we have letters between them. Before he met our mother, he came back and met her later, but, I know that there was a Fraulein over there, and he always liked that song, Fraulein. But I was just wondering if, since you were his friend, if you knew where they met or anything. 'Cause,
Well, if you stood on the corner long enough, you had a chocolate candy bar in your hand, I guarantee somebody come along and wanted it. But that wasn't the way, really, that he met the blonde-headed friend. But we were on the street now, and then there was two of those young ladies. And they wasn't real talkative when they come by, but we were. We got to talking to them, and they didn't stop and talk to us, but we followed them and talked to them. And they didn't understand much we were saying, and we didn't much understand what they were saying back, but we still talked. And we got to a corner somewhere, time to go across the street, where we escorted them across the street. So that was pretty much the getting acquainted with them, like that. And then we even found out where they lived, and we went there a time or two to see them and all. And they learned where we were staying, and they would come to the street and the houses where we were, and that's where I had my picture made with a little blonde girl, and the other one, she didn't want to have her picture made with me. I didn't want mine made with her, but I had my picture made there with the washwoman in the back of the place there. That I saw her every now and then washing my clothes, and I saw her. But that's pretty well the end of that.
well, was Elfrida, was it a friend or related to that other girl?
That I don't know whether they were related or not. They didn't look all that much alike.
Well-
Both of them had blonde hair, but they didn't favor one another at all.
Well, you were talking about my dad playing music with Elfrida's father, who played accordion, I think you said.
Yeah,
He was an accordion player.
yeah, he was a accordion player, but
how did their music come out together, being completely different types of music, I guess?
It was a different type of music, and I think it was, I don't know if you call it a different type of rhythm. What? But they could get things coordinated now. The guitar just wouldn't coordinate with that push and pull, and we would laugh about it. How hard Ralph would try to stay within beat with him, and it just didn't work out.
Hmm.
And that got to be a real joke. That they did, so Ralph would just totally quit playing the guitar, and we'd listen to him. That caught him. He was good on it too. He was real good. Ralph was good with the guitar too, but not with that.
Was it some kind of polka stuff, or you know what kind of music it was? Could you tell?
That he was playing.
Yeah, that's
Well, it
right.
had to be German music now, and what?
Yeah.
I don't know what you would call it. And it was music. I guess you'd see the German dance to it, and it was nothing like the rhythm that we have in music. It was nothing like. I don't know how to explain it. Really, I just don't.
Well, I guess Daddy didn't know that music, so it was, he played by ear always, so if he didn't know it, it would be kind of hard to play it together.
He tried, he wanted to, but it just didn't work.
Yeah. Well, you said there was another German that played a harmonica really well.
Oh, yeah. Now that was one. And there again, you couldn't, well, you can't, with a guitar, I don't think you can stay up with a harmonica without you practice it together an awful lot anyway. But that guy with the harmonica, he totally outrun the guitar player. I mean, he didn't know he was staying to that. And again, that man was real good with the harmonica. Real good. How did I know he was real good? Because he made a lot of records. That's all I know. It was good music that he was making on that harmonica.
Well, now, was that after the war there in Stuttgart?
Yeah, that was after the war. That was after the war. And, you know, after a period of time there, now, we were not supposed to fraternize with the German people. But that May 8th, when the war was over, as far as we were concerned, May 9th, that didn't, as far as we were concerned, that didn't carry on any longer. So from then on, we fraternized with the German people, and our commanding officers says, don't fraternize, but that didn't mean anything. We did. And the people, it was amazing, just of the friendship of the German people towards the American GI. It was amazing. Most of them really appreciated the American people liberating their part of Germany. Now the Russians, they hated the Russians. They any other, even England now, America stood out into them much more than any other fighting country there. Canada, all the others. Now the French come in, and that was the most noisiest bunch of people in there. When we crossed that Rhine River, it wasn't too long until there was a French army who crossed it. These people were people that were hibernated, I guess, till the appropriate time when they come back out as French soldiers. When they crossed that Rhine River and come into Germany, they brought their wives with them. And they say, well, how you know they're wives? Well, that's what we thought, because they stayed together, slept together, all this. So it was their wives. And it was. I mean, it was bona fide that was their wives. how long they'd been married or how long they were going to stay married. I don't know about that. But they noisy. They were noisy as they could be. And nighttime didn't mean anything. That was after the war too. They was noisy as they could be, and they were taking shooting the guns. This was, well, there was a group of them right close to Schorndorf, and they were terrible.
Well, now, I also wanted to ask, Betty kept saying that you were telling about some soldier there around the 1st of April that may have won a citation or something, and seemed like you said he just sort of was untouchable. He got to go anywhere, do anything, or whatever. Can you give me a little background about that and tell me?
He was in our company. I was not acquainted with him at all. He was good. He was a good soldier. He was a good combat soldier. And I don't know just what all that he did do. I know he killed an awful lot of German soldiers. And I don't recall just where we were at the time that this happened, that he had accomplished his good soldier in there. But he took over a lieutenant that got killed. He took over the position and led the particular, well, I guess where we were, as you had the first lieutenant and the second lieutenant, and then you had the captain, which was of the whole company. And he was down to a first lieutenant that he replaced because that lieutenant got killed. Now then, he was commissioned right there, I mean, on the battlefield, because he took this man's place, is what he done. And as he done that, then the captain and now, when you get to the lieutenants, your first lieutenant, your second lieutenant, you take a first lieutenant. Your first lieutenant, he had bronze on the star. The second lieutenant was silver. And he had won first lieutenant, took over the position of it, and that was done through the act of Congress and the President of the United States. And for him to be busted from that position, or as an officer, he had to go back through the same direction it was. And his chances of being busted from second lieutenant back to a private was zero. I mean, that just, you don't backtrack like that and get the act of Congress to act on that, not even the president. Because malices could be whatever. Man had a good time, maybe what he done, he left the company and he didn't come back till way late, so he was AWOL. And when he did get back to the company, they did not let him back on the front lines, for sure. So he was just more in the rear rush line all the time.
Now,
and he didn't see any more war.
Did you know the name of that soldier? Or was
I did not know his name. I couldn't tell you today what his name was.
But it's possible that your outfit could have been fighting and right beside him in the same battle.
We could have been almost side by side. Now he was in our company. He was definitely in our company. We could have been side by side almost, and yet with all the achievements that he had, maybe that we were leaning towards this direction, and he may have been leaning towards another direction when all this activity was going on.
Isn't there, Jesse, could be 200 people in a company? How many people are in a company? Average, maybe?
You own a company, you had give or take 200 people.
Yeah. So
Give or take total.
that's so many people that it could easily be that 3 or 4 different things could be going on, and you'd just be involved in one
But you
section.
see, he was in Company C. He was part of us. Now, but my point is that here, our direction is here, and Sambo's direction might be over here, and you might have somebody in between you even.
Mhm.
So here we could be pinned down real tight here, fighting, going this direction. These one in the center of it could more or less not be getting that much activity going on,
Right.
and they would even be leaning towards helping us this way, or vice versa if it was the other way. So we don't know what Sam was doing versus what Claude was doing over here, and that's the way he come about now. And personally, I made him talk with him and all this and the other many times. I say, not all that many, but I had talked with him several times. Because he had nothing else to do, and he welcomed somebody to talk to. And he was a real nice man, real nice man. But, and I'm sure when he come back home, that he still come home with his head high and mighty, because he held his position, and he come home as first lieutenant.
Was he a pretty young guy? Do you remember how old he was?
I'd say that he was probably no older than between my age and Smitty. We were somewhere all about the same age. And the whole thing was age-wise, all of us men were about the same age. Yeah, you didn't have, you had some that would just, that had just come into as replacements. But a lot of the real young ones, now 18-year-old we'll say, hadn't reached 19, they were few in number. They when they reached 18, they could be drafted, and every time they finished their basic, and then send them right on over, maybe even without a delay en route to PO, to go overseas. And then wind up over there, and still you're a very young man, very young, just out of school.
Mm-hmm.
We had a lot of those men that come in after the war was over. So they all age group pretty much in as far as fighting. And they were all pretty much the same age. There wasn't a whole lot of difference in ages.
Daddy recalled, he was telling me there was one young one that came in as a replacement, and he was, I think, 18. He said he was so young, just graduated from high school, had a girlfriend that he'd always, his first girlfriend, and he was going to get married to her. And he said he would talk about his girlfriend, and he didn't survive over, it sounded like a week or two, and when he got killed, Daddy said that was about the worst thing that he saw. It hurt him worse to see that kid. He considered him a kid. Daddy was probably 22, 24, I guess, wasn't he?
Yeah, by the time the war ended, see, Dad celebrated his 25th birthday on April 23rd of 45. So he was 25. And 18-year-old, that was 7 years, 6 and 7 years younger than Ralph. So
he considered that a guy, a boy, and he said he knows that I knew that kid was still a virgin, never been with a woman, never lived. And when he got killed, he said it really shook him up. He hated to see that worse than anything, because he just thought it was tragic.
And he also said that all those fresh replacements, the young ones particularly, the first thing they'd want to do is get right behind that tank and follow that tank, thinking it was a shield. And he said they'd end up more of them get killed that way than anything else, because that was the first thing let the enemy know that they were coming. The way he looked at it, you know, and
We had been in the battle lines for any length of time, no stay away from a tank. In fact, you didn't want one. You didn't want a tank anywhere around you. Now that was the first thing they have. When the artillery, when they could take, when the Germans could locate where tanks was, that's where your artillery barrage would start. And of course, they had, evidently, they had more ammunition like that than they had tanks to take and discharge it. And they would really unload that stuff on you. And they think that they could produce that stuff that fast. But they did, they produced it fast enough that they would really load, lay the artillery in on you. And we hated a tank. Now, where we enjoyed a tank, if we got bogged down to the extent we couldn't move, call for the tanks. You know what was going to happen, but you could call for the tanks and they'd go in, and by the time they got through with their artillery in on the Germans that had us pinned down, it would be enough that it would lighten the load as far as the number of people out there in front of you that were holding you back, knowing that here the German artillery was going to come in on top of you.
yeah.
And now planes is what when that artillery started coming in, the planes is what we enjoyed seeing. Because they were up there in that area and they could see where that artillery was located because of the flash of the guns. Even in the daytime they